We are Science the Show, which used to be a live science and comedy show based out of Los Angeles, California. That's why we're at 6 o'clock PST. But nothing can be live right now. So for the past year, we've been doing live stream shows, trying to help break down some of the barriers that people feel around science. Trust is a huge one, but also that a lot of people think of science as something that happens out there, right? Who are scientists? Most people don't know scientists. I happen to have one of them as a best friend, so I'm lucky in that. But we do what we can to try to break down those boundaries and show people their own friendly neighborhood scientists. So that's what we do. We've got some ground rules. Dylan, do you want to give some ground rules about how this stream works?
Yeah, one, I'm running it, so don't be mean if it's not working. That's a very important ground rule. No one's allowed to be mean to me about the stream. Maybe other things like my personality. Uh, two, like just keep it clean in the chat with the degree. Like we say fucking shit and stuff on here, but like don't be rude. Obviously, we're trying to promote a conversation, but
Yes.
it just like be cordial about it.
This,
Um,
yeah, to language and stuff. This isn't a show for kids. A lot of science content gets made for uh, PG or younger, and while that's really important, and we love that, we think it's important to be able to have discussions with adults as well. Dylan's sound level are much lower than Alex. Dylan, you
yeah,
want to pick yourself up?
I
Yeah.
just turned it up. Now, hopefully, it's
Um,
not blowing out
cool.
people's eardrums. But yeah,
Yeah.
um,
So, in a second, we're going to get started. We like to start each show with Russell, who's at the very top of our side, giving us a psychologist's perspective. He's a cognitive scientist trained in psychology, a cognitive scientist perspective on the topic, on what we're covering. So, he likes to lead us through something for 10 minutes or so. We'll do that in a second, but we want to go see. We're getting a lot of feedback, so if anyone else is hearing a lot of terrible feedback, let us know.
yeah.
Uh, Hi, Patricia from Oak Hall Farm. Uh, okay,
I think that's an
cool.
automatic message. It's not a someone
Okay,
actually talking to you. That's
really?
like
Oh,
that's like responding
okay.
to a voicemail.
Okay, cool.
Um,
I'm hearing no feedback from Nicole and Jess. So, do you guys want to get started with it?
yeah, yeah. No, I'm down.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so we're going to start with having Russell give us a cognitive scientist perspective on how trust works and what trust is. So please give me a virtual round of applause for my best friend and yours, the cognitive scientist for all of us, Dr. Russell Cohen-Hoffing.
Thank you. So today we're going to be talking about trust and specifically the factors that are influencing trust. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to be giving y'all some scenarios to work through. So the first scenario, and this is for Dylan and Alex, and also the audience. Please chime in. So the first scenario is that you are approached by a stranger on the street who asks you to give them a ride to the store. Do you give them a ride?
Hell no.
um,
No.
Wait, if someone asks you, no, and also fuck you for doing that. That's an extremely like putting like that's like an imposition on
Yeah,
me because then I have to reconsider whether or not like I'm a good person for saying no to
exactly.
you.
Right. You not only put me in a situation I don't want to be in, you've now forced me through this fantasy of yours to feel bad about myself.
Yeah, no, I don't like that one.
So then why do you not trust this person? Like, why would you say no? Like, what would you need to trust this person to decide to let them, decide to give them a ride?
Wait, okay, so it has to be a stranger. I can't be like, oh, it has to be my friend or whatever.
So I think then I would ask is like, why does it being a friend matter?
I
Right?
guess in this scenario, it's so weird. Like I have such a vivid image of being like on a back road and someone's like coming up to me where it could very well just be on a city street, which would also be like a no, but it doesn't.
No,
I have visions of danger.
yeah. I also, who is this person to trust me? Like, they don't know that I'm not a murderer. And the
That
fact
is
that they're
not the direction I thought.
but wait, the fact that they're trusting me for no good reason makes me not trust them. Right? Like, why are you assuming that I'm a good person? I'd like to think I'm a good person. I think I'm a good person, but I don't look like some beaming moral, a beacon of morality.
So I'm hearing like a couple different things. Like, so from Dylan, right? He's talking about that he needs to know that he's not going to be in danger, right? A friend, obviously, you can trust a person is not going to hurt you. And Alex, you are talking about you evaluating someone's judgment of yourself as an indicator of trust. So those are kinds of things that cognitive scientists study and try to understand in terms of what is influencing trust. And I'm going to talk about a few of those things. So this next scenario, I need Alex's help for in reading. So this comes to us by a handful of Swiss scientists. So everything is about Swiss people in this scenario. And yeah, so Alex, please read this scenario for me.
Oh God.
Okay, Dylan,
Yes.
you have just started working as a middle manager in a big company. You have to meet the Swiss manager for international coordination, which is a thing that exists in this big company, to organize an important trip. As you don't know how to reach this manager, you rely on the coffee break room to ask two of your
That's
colleagues.
insane. Am I the most incompetent worker on the planet? Just like on email.
Okay, so let's meet your two colleagues.
Did a scientist make up this situation or like
Absolutely,
that's
yes.
that's insane. Hello.
Okay, hello, Dylan. I'm not going to do a Swiss accent because there's no way I can't pull that off. The international coordinator? Yeah, I know him. It's Mr. Dez in Building L. You can definitely find him
Was
there.
this in like the 70s, like before computers and shit? And they were like, I
No,
guess you just gotta talk to him.
are you saying that because of the cool scarf or
I'm
what?
just saying it because of the like. There's like literally no computer as an option in this. Like, but sorry.
Sometimes it's just easier to, talk to somebody,
Okay.
Dylan. Sometimes.
Sometimes.
So that was colleague one. All right, colleague two.
Hmm, I don't know, but for international coordination, I think it's Mr. Grandjean in Building B, but I'm not really sure.
Okay, so of the two, Dylan, which building would you go look in?
Okay, I get it. I get it. I get it. I will go to building A. Chat, back me up on this. Because the other person was more confident. I'm gonna go, and I'm a dumb animal or whatever the fuck.
Okay.
Okay.
Astute observation, Dylan. So you go look in building A, and it turns out that the international coordinator is not there. And you go look in the other building, and it turns out both of them were wrong. They were not in either of those buildings. Okay. So the follow-up scenario is
Trust no one.
Here's the follow-up scenario. So, Alex, please read this for me.
Okay. So now, Dylan, you're the team leader of these two Swiss colleagues you saw during the coffee break. You're about to start two new projects. The first project has no interest or importance. It's something boring. You're like stapling pictures of your own face back to back. Taking part in this project is demeaning and can be seen as a kind of punishment. Which of the two do you choose to do this?
Sorry, I was fixing something. I was not paying attention to you. Can you read the scenario again?
So you've got to choose one person of these two Swiss colleagues you've just talked to for a
Demeaning.
Taking in this project is demeaning and can be seen as a punishment. Wow. This is a very weird twist. I'm just gonna go with A. I don't know, they seemed like they knew what they were talking about, even if it. Look, they both fucked me over ultimately, so whoever I go with is just going down with this ship.
But initially you would choose the first
Yeah.
one? Okay. Okay, so all of these scenarios are built. The point that I'm trying to make is that we are built to assess and also reassess our trust in others. So Dylan, like most other people who are responding to these scenarios, they start out by choosing the person who's confident. We use confidence as a cue for trustworthiness. It's almost like our default is if you don't have a cue to mistrust somebody, then you think confidence, there's a good reason they're confident because they know what the answer is, right? You have no reason to mistrust them. So we use confidence as a cue for informing who we trust. And the second is that we track the sources of where our information comes from, and for when we because it allows us to validate that information, and then we can update our trust. So in that scenario, right, you followed the confidence person's information, it turned out to be wrong, and you are going to distrust this person in the future. Not only that, you like this person left, clearly, because you want to punish them. And so that's what most people choose that in this
It's very
scenario.
petty. Is pettiness
Wait,
just built into us?
yes, we're built in to be petty. Russell, is it so you're like saying that trust is a bet, which is something you've said on other shows before, but if someone goes all in and they lose way more than someone who hedges their bets, right? Like it's
Yep.
almost as if trust is like quantized, you know? If you give 100 and you lose it all, there's nothing left to trust.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. So what I left out of the another question that is typically asked with this scenario is that, who do you decide to reward out of the two? And people, by and large, choose the person that was less confident. So it's not only that you trust a more confident person less in this scenario, but you also trust the less confident person more than you did before. So it's not just it doesn't come out as
Is it because
neutral.
you relate to the second person more, where they like you were both living in ignorance, and the other person also was living in ignorance but pretended not to, and so now you have
So
a bond that a certain kinship to living in the dark.
well, I would do that, but the as a scientist, but the way that they talk about this in the research is that this is another kind of cue that people use, is so that somebody, what you deemed is that this person has an accurate representation of their own knowledge, right? That they know how accurate based on their information is, and you can use that. That is a cue for you that they are reliable
Mhm.
in their information. And they think this is a cue because when they do this kind of these studies in children don't behave this way at all. They don't update based on somebody's accuracy or
Right.
how much it related to how confident they were previously.
So we're talking about this in a show that's about why people do and don't trust science, because is there an ultimate point about how people's trust is earned or about how people's trust is lost?
Yeah, I think so, and I think actually our guests would have a lot to speak to that and connect to that point that you just asked. And
Uh-huh.
why don't we bring them
Yeah,
on?
here I'll,
Okay.
I'll let you know when their videos
Yeah.
are on.
So
Boom.
yeah, go ahead and bring them live. Guys, I'm going to
Boom.
introduce our two
Do you want to
guests.
do the
So
intro and then I put them on, or do you want me to just put them on and then?
bring them on and off
Uh,
the show because it'll take a
okay,
while.
all right. Well, I thought it'd be like, look at the Kurt.
Okay,
Okay, they're
sure.
on the screen.
So our first guest is Dr. Adrian L. Hollis, who's the Senior Climate Justice and Health Scientist for the Climate and Energy Program at the Union of Concerned Scientists. She develops and implements projects to document health impacts of climate change on communities of color and ensures scientific information from UCS is communicated in a culturally competent and helpful manner to vulnerable populations. And our second guest, who's up top, is Dr. David S. Meyer. He's a professor of sociology and political science at the University of California, Irvine. He's the author of numerous articles and The Politics of Protest, Social Movements in America, as well as several other books. You can find his blogs at politicsoutdoors.com. David and Adrian, thank you both for joining us. I'm really happy we have you with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Good to be with you. Yeah.
Can I ask you both the question Russell asked us? if someone asked you for a ride on the street, what would you do?
I'd say no. I wouldn't even let the window down. So
they're just like they're like bleeding.
I'll call the 911.
Uh,
Oh, I feel vulnerable now, but as a younger man, I used to travel by hitchhiking, which seems really
wait,
stupid in
no way.
retrospect.
What?
Absolutely way. And I remember hitchhiking through the South, where I am not from, and getting picked up by this guy, and I was carrying a mandolin. And he said, "So you're carrying a mandolin?" And I said, "Yeah, because my guitar is like expensive and I wouldn't want it to get hurt." And this guy who was driving a very fancy car said, "Huh, so you don't want to take your guitar on the road, but you're taking yourself on the road. You might want to think about that."
This sounds like
And that was like the next 10 years of my life thinking about that.
oh god. Yeah, wow.
Wow.
Okay. That's
So we're here to talk about trust and science. You are both scientists, you both communicate science, or you both deal with people's trust in science. And I think I wanted to start off our discussion, and we will definitely take some questions for the audience in a bit, but I wanted to ask more of a personal question. Who do you guys trust and why?
Well, I trust people that have who've proven themselves to be trustworthy. If that means that I have fact checked or, asked about them, then I do that. And that helps me to decide whether I want to trust them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, trust is pretty segmented. There are people I trust on particular things. So I've been going to the same dentist for 20 years and I really trust him. And he shows me my x-rays and explains them to me and I don't understand them, but I trust him. But I don't ask him how to boost my Wi-Fi and I don't ask him for moral guidance. And we absolutely never talk politics. So trust is limited, but I trust him on my teeth.
But see, I wouldn't trust him after 20 years unless, unless I knew that he was regularly, um, increasing his knowledge. And I'd have to find that out, whether or not he was taking courses or reading articles. I need to know. Or are you doing what you did 20 years ago?
Damn,
Man,
that's
that's like I want to take you on a tour of my dentist's office because he upgrades his equipment routinely.
Okay.
that's interesting.
It's a good tip.
Yeah, your trust keeps going.
It's confirmed, and I know you can see me, but he didn't do my orthodonture when I was a kid.
I had a
That dentist I do not
there was
trust.
one point brought up in the chat by a head cynic about the fact like distrust of science or like scientists has to do with like education being associated with elites and elites not taking into consideration like an everyman or whatever. Like why would a scientist be honest with me because they don't live in the same world as me? I don't know, David or Adrian, if you can comment on that.
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily always true.
Mm-hmm.
There are instances, particularly in the past, um, when some scientists interacted with the general public, it was more of a "I know, you don't need to know" sort of thing.
Yeah.
But now, you have to know a lot about the person. You don't know my background, where I'm from and why I do what I do, right? I mean, I'm from Alabama and I grew up poor and environmental toxins was very real for me. So yeah, that's my passion. But you don't know that just by knowing that I have a PhD or whatever, right? You have to get to know somebody. And now, in the past though, that's why, so when you were talking earlier about the confident person, that's not always a good thing, right? Because historically, you have people going into communities and I know this, and your exposure, you're more likely to die by eating peanut butter or something, whatever. It is very insulting, and so sometimes confidence is a negative.
That actually, that takes me. I want to start with Adrian. So your job with UCS is trying to not just bring UCS's scientists to other communities, but make sure that you're bringing those communities and their input into UCS. Is that correct?
That is exactly correct.
Can you let us know how something like that, how that happened? Because it used to be, it sounds like at least, it used to be a little bit more of a us to them rather than we meet each other in the middle. What changed?
Well, I mean, it's changing,
Okay.
right? And it has to change on both sides because a number of scientists, not everybody, they're used to operating in silos and focusing on addressing an issue. And a lot of communities um, have had have net have had bad relationships or bad interactions with some scientists or some professionals like that, and so they're not going to immediately trust you, or because they don't have the degrees or that some people expect, they may not be even invited into that space, which isn't fair because community science is real, right? The
Hmm.
historical knowledge that that communities have is real. So it involves a lot of interaction and really spending time getting to know somebody. I mean, the saying is communities don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And the way that happens is through discussion, and it's time intensive and it's worth it on both sides, because that's where, if you're, the work that you do, and I was telling somebody this today, the work that you do should always, the question you should always ask is, who is this going to benefit, or who is most at risk? What group will my results affect most? And when you do that, you have to think about, now, how do I communicate this information to them in a manner that they're going to trust?
And have you found that with groups that were historically either left out of the scientific process or maybe even harmed by the scientific process, that there is a capability of restoring trust if you take that time?
I do think that, yes, definitely. I mean, when I first started working with communities, I was working in a federal environmental organization, and just that alone led to distrust. And I got to know people, and they saw me, and I showed up every time, and I was there to answer questions when I can and to help when I can. And I asked them questions, they asked me questions, and we spent time together, and wrote grants together and did research together. And that's the key thing. We did it as partners, and
Yeah.
I still believe in that, partnerships.
Yeah.
Um,
David, do you want to comment at all?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's great. So, like, one thing you're talking about is when a scientist is trying to communicate effectively, she wants to make her audience smarter and more competent, right? She wants to explain how you got to the answer you got. So, you remember, like, when you were learning math in grade school, you didn't get full credit unless you showed your work.
right.
Well, scientists should show their work too. And in real life, I mean, I've seen electrophoretic gel results, and I don't understand them. But the fact that somebody puts them out in front of me and tries to explain them and tells how they got to where they got, that helps me learn to trust them rather than just giving a declaration that they know stuff. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that Adrian mentioned, which is really critical, you have to believe that the person who's telling you something is interested only in the truth and doesn't have like an interest that's apart from your interest. So when you go to buy a car from a used car dealer and they tell you this is the most reliable car on earth and I get a commission, except they don't tell you they get a commission, they have a vested interest in doing that. I remember like going to buy a suit when I got married and the salesperson said, "You look great in that suit." And I was fortunate that my wife was there because she said, "No, I don't think so."
Terrible. You look
Yeah,
awesome.
so the commission undermined the credibility. And what Adrian is promising is you say if you build relationships with people, you can convince them one of your interest, which is shared with their interest, and two, that you actually you've earned your knowledge in some way, that you have a stake in figuring out truth about stuff. And those are like great tips for anything.
So that, oh, Russell, go ahead, because I think I'll end up leading us to a different place. So ask your question first.
Yeah, this is, I guess, lead us to a slightly different place, but I feel like, that a lot of the concern about trusting science, is with people who are in trusting relationships with just people who are not, say in line with scientist conclusions. Like, they're trusting people who they think have their best interests in mind, and and have spent the time like becoming credible in in these people in those people's minds. Like, how do you, I don't know, like I have a hard time wrapping my head around that. It's like that, the mechanisms of trust and what you do to get people to trust you don't, rely on what kind of things you're saying, as long as as long as you convince people that you care about them.
When you say convince, and both of you said it, that makes me a little hesitant, because it's not, convincing sounds like trickery to me.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm convincing them, it's that they, I get to know them and they get to know me. So it works both ways, right? Because I have to trust them too, that they are interested in a legitimate partnership with me,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that we're both working for the same thing. We're working to get the same answers. And so it's not about convincing them. It's about showing them that we have the same interests and we're about the same, the same questions, and we have the same passions and the same concerns. And so I don't know if that convinces the word. I don't know what the word is, but that one just kind of makes me think, oh, I'm like almost hypnotizing them.
uh,
Instill trust in. Could
Demonstrate. You demonstrate that you can, that you're on their
I
side.
think
And that
And
they're on my side. They do the same. They have to do the same thing.
I think one question I had, and maybe this, I know, Adrian, you mentioned that you're a bit of a pessimist in this regard, which is going to be great. I love it. I love the despair personally in my life. Has to do with, so like, as you guys have said, like, not convincing people, but I'm having someone understand that your goal is like mutual. It's on like a larger public scale, it feels impossible, especially with the like, with internet or what have you. I'm not sure if you have any sense that maybe it isn't, but or like just any what your perspective is on that, and like the idea of like scientists, obviously on an individual level, you can create that trust, but how do you create like trust for like, I don't know, like just like the CDC as like an organization, like I don't even know how. I think of the CDC and I think of the organization that made the zombie virus in Resident Evil. I can't remember the name, but that's what I think of. I'm like, they're probably doing that. They're not going to tell me about it, but they're probably doing that. That makes sense at all?
Is
uh,
who's talking to David or me?
Oh, both of, I guess whoever wants to answer.
I'll let David go first this time.
some stuff's relatively easy because it's demonstrable in the real world, right? So physicists, I believe, I haven't checked this, why have basic consensus on any issues about gravity that affect my life, right? And I've signed on, right? Like I know and I can demonstrate it. When I let go of this pen, it goes down just like every time, not even 99% of the time. Some stuff is relatively easy. And when you're thinking about the stuff that's relatively easy for people like us or people like me, who is not a climate scientist, I say, okay, so who are the people who are climate scientists? What do they say? And when there is a massive consensus on people who do climate science all day long, and they agree that the earth is warming and the climate is changing and that people caused it, and that's like a 98% consensus, I feel like I can saunter that without like gathering the data myself.
But
So those are easy.
a lot of people can't. A lot of people don't sign on to the climate science, even though it's demonstrably true, and the consensus is that it's fairly clear. And my sense on why not is because of some of the same stuff we've all been talking about. I mean, as much as there are the Adrians of the world who are making connections with people to try to bring them to trust the science, I feel like there is an equal and opposite reaction from people who don't trust it. And it almost, when people talk about science mistrust and science denialism, I notice that a lot of people like to put the onus and the blame on individuals. And that feels like it's missing the point that there is strong institutional push to try to convince people or give them reason to think the opposite. And I wonder if that's something that either of you notice or have to deal with, that there's a lot of strength and force on people trying to convince people against the findings.
Well, let me dip in here quick. So the
Okay.
reason I started with the dentist is the dentist, no news from my dentist is my best news, but every now and then, not too long ago, he came in with bad news from the back of my mouth. And I had to make a decision about whether to like subject myself to pain, to expense, and to inconvenience time in the chair. And the key to like making trust make sense is when you're going to listen to somebody when they tell you something you don't want to hear. Right? So, I'm not going to make the Olympics in 2021. I got the answer from my coach. I don't feel good about that, but it's real life and I'm going to deal with it because there's verifiable standards about it. And so you're looking to say, am I only going to trust people who tell me nice things, who tell me, oh, you have a beautiful singing voice and you can drive a big polluting car and everything's going to go great? Well, that feels good, but it's not honest. And so the key in trust is like setting yourself up for a relationship in which you're going to take news you don't necessarily want to hear.
I agree with that. You have to be open. And when somebody disagrees, which I think was what you were talking about, first I'm going to try to find out why. Like, why don't you believe this? Why do you choose not to believe this? And if it's something that I can deal with, then I'm going to try to show you why this is true, why this is not true. I have a neighbor, if I might tell you this quick story. I have a neighbor who has never worn a mask, right? And we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah.
And when I wear a mask and I'm walking my dog, he's walking his dog, I always say to him, "You're welcome." And he says, "Why?" I said, "Well, obviously I'm trying to save your life, but you don't give a damn about mine."
Wait, this is a real interaction you have with a real human being? Yeah. That fucking rules.
Yeah. And it's always, welcome. Today you're welcome. Another day I'm saving your life. And when I asked him about it, I said, "Well, why won't you wear a mask?" Well, because, there's really no such thing. Okay, I can't, there's some things that are not worth the discussion because and I know that there are people on their deathbed who say that COVID is a hoax. And there comes a point when you realize there's nothing you can do except try to help and save the people you can, and family and everybody included. And you have to cut your losses. Other times, my trust is based on, sometimes it's based on other people. Do you know this person? Have you heard about them? What do you know about them? Somebody always inevitably knows somebody else.
Yeah.
So I call it my background check, but not really because I'm not paying for that. But, I call somebody and ask them, do they have a good reputation, or if there's someone, do they make up things? Because there are people, believe it or not, who make up scientific fact, which, you know, alternative facts, as we
Yeah.
know as. So I'm not going to sign on to that, or, partner with you. But when I see people who, because I go to them, you have to go where people are, right? If somebody tells me that they're living in an environment that is hazardous and like Cancer Alley,
Yeah.
or which is near my house, near Mobile, and I was telling somebody today, it's so important to go and see who you're working with and for, right? Because you can visualize this. This is real life. It's not in a book. It's not in a movie. It's real life. And
Right.
the only way that people are gonna know that you really care and that you're trustworthy is if they know that you understand where they're coming from. In order to understand that, you've got to walk in their shoes. Maybe you can't do it to the extent that they live this every day, but you can see what it is and understand it and understand the impact of whatever it is you're saying, whether it's positive or negative, right?
And I want to jump on just to continue on that point, because I think it's like a really, important point. I think about this is like, what do you what at what point do you determine whether somebody is like worth trying to, like convince or drop off? And Alex and Dylan actually want to hear what you
When they're a
guys,
lost
you know,
cause.
yeah, whether somebody's a lost cause, because I mean that can be a huge gap. Like, the like idealistic kind person in me, it's like, there's no person that I can't, like do. But on the other hand, you could easily just, anybody who just disagrees could be like, they're a lost cause,
Yeah.
No, I think it takes more than one. This particular person, I hope he's not listening.
You
Nice
just
guy,
dunking
really
on
nice
him.
guy. He started talking about the what do you call it? The clouds and the planes that come by and
Chemtrails.
Chemtrails.
yes, chemtrails. And I was like, what? And you start getting to this whole discussion. So I knew we were going where we were headed.
Yeah.
That was before COVID. And so by the time we came around to the pandemic, I felt like, okay, yeah, no, it's not gonna.
About a month into COVID, and we were locked down pretty much. The first time I went out was to get a pizza to bring home, and I was waiting outside the pizza place, and I was wearing a mask, and this guy came and he's just saying, the whole thing's a hoax. Whole thing's a hoax. And I said, this hydroxychloroquine is garbage. Actually, you can get good price on hydroxychloroquine now. Lots of people were trying to dump it, but and what's the setting? Is this a setting where I'm an educator? Is this where I'm working with students, or is this like I'm just trying to get a pizza?
Right.
And he just kept wanting to talk, and I said, well, what are your sources on this stuff? And he said, this is honestly true. Alex Jones, InfoWars, baby.
Oh,
And I just said,
Jesus.
check, please. Right? I mean, it's like
Yeah.
that's like over, right? I mean, but students or family members are tough. But students, when you have a professional obligation, you
See, you're
try
too
to
brave.
engage.
You're too brave. Because first of all, don't talk to me if you're not wearing a mask. Don't breathe over here. Don't look at me.
Except
Don't
your
come over.
neighbor, I guess. Well, I don't know if
No,
you've done.
we do the distance
Yeah.
thing, and
So
you're
you should
welcome.
pass them in
From
like,
a
yeah.
distance. Just don't talk to me. Don't breathe. It. Don't do anything. Leave me alone. Don't talk to my dog. Don't do anything.
Oh gosh,
I'm serious. I do. That's the way I feel. And I'm walking down the street. I'm like, don't talk to me.
that's so funny.
I want to see if I can steer us now to a slightly different topic, but one that we're talking about with InfoWars Alex Jones baby. People trust Alex Jones, right? Why do people trust Donald Trump about science? Why do people trust the people that they trust when there isn't scientific consensus, or the scientific consensus is the opposite of what they're saying?
This is old stuff. This is like Plato wrote about this. Plato said, the problem is if you have a doctor, I'm paraphrasing, who tells you you don't need to lose weight, you should eat a lot of candy, you're doing really well, and the bathing thing, don't get hung up on it. You look marvelous. That would be a very popular doctor, but that doctor's not looking out for you. Now, if somebody tells you stuff that tells you you're doing great, or explains your disappointment in ways that have nothing to do with you, then that person is going to build a clientele, offering like a default explanation for disappointment. The world is stacked against you, except for me, you're good. And sometimes people want to hear that. People from my background want to hear about how substandard they are and how all the ways they're letting people down. That's when I start to trust people.
Oh gosh.
But
I feel like I had a
That's a
that
cultural
trust
thing. We should let that go.
fails, when that trust seems to keep coming back and you're losing and you're losing and you're losing, right? I'm thinking about something like QAnon, right? That's making a prediction that this thing's going to happen, then this thing, then Hillary Clinton's going to go to jail, then this, and it never seems to happen. But trust keeps building. I know we're talking about something that gets a little cultic at that point, but like, why does trust stay strong in those instances?
why do you stay with the romantic partner who disappoints you over and over and over again?
And we're still talking
Right?
about this hypothetical, right? Is that what we're
Right. I mean, that none of us have ever done that at 19, right? I mean, but like, right? It's like once you've
I
like
think I was
crossed the
27.
like everybody's got an age, right?
Yeah.
But like once you've crossed the line and done stuff that's stupid that you know is against your better judgment to maintain a relationship, you're more likely to do something else that's stupid because you it's a fallacy of like doubling down
Uh-huh.
or sunk costs. I've put $100,000 in like 2 years of my life into this, therefore it has to work. It has to work. And it takes a little bit of rationality and a little bit of bravery to say, well, I thought this was smart out not to be. And some of the QAnon followers are going to make that break. The arrests are going to help. And some of them are going to double down and find some way to rationalize their continued participation. Think about, I'm sorry, I don't want to drag up your romantic relationships, but you've done it too.
Yeah, I have. That's definitely
I've
true.
never made
And
any mistakes in any capacity, frankly, so I can't really relate to this one.
Is there a way, and I guess this is off of Dylan's comment earlier about the CDC, where
it's
talking
the T virus.
person,
That's in the Resident Evil thing.
I'm really worried
I
about
just remembered.
But you're talking to individual people and it's not so difficult, right? We've all had a moment where we've made a breakthrough probably with one friend, one family member, but society-wide, do either of you have any recommendations for where we go from here? Because things seem a little dire, no?
I think that they are dire, but they're looking up. Started looking up on January 20th. No, but I feel like I think that this administration is going about it the right way, putting action behind their words, and that's what people want in general. When you talk about trust, why would I trust you unless you show me that you mean what you say? And just I don't want to get into too much discussion about the executive orders, so don't ask me questions, specific questions. But saying you're going to put COVID-19 up front and climate change and environmental justice and all of these things, and then doing it, starting to do some of that, that goes a long way. And then putting people in positions of authority or positions where we can get so that we can get the information we need or start getting the information. And as I said, somebody knows, like, I don't know Dr. Fauci personally, but I trust him because I have seen his work. I have followed some of his work, and I know people who have followed his work. And I saw how uncomfortable he was in the last administration at various times. And I also listen to what he says. And so those things lead me to be more trusting of people. And so I think it's a lot about not only being transparent, which I think that they're doing a great job of, and we all need to do that, be transparent, but we also need to put our words to action, or put, what is it? Put your, walk the talk,
Oh,
right?
Your money where your mouth is.
See, I don't talk about money, but, but yeah, put your money where your mouth is, walk the talk, you know, don't write a check you're asking cash, stuff like
oh
that.
yeah, that's what I.
I haven't met the Dr. Fauci at all, but I paid attention to his career. And his first answer when you ask him about anything is always grounded in data, right? It's like, well, let's see. There's not an answer on this, but there's good evidence for this. That's a positive signal. The fact that he is like an infectious, and I'm an academic geek, I'm going to like just confess. The fact that
Oh,
he's
really?
published 1,400 papers, you know, that works for me a little bit, right? I mean, he's like gone through the refereed journal article process, which means that he's had to confront data and presentation of data. And he talks to other people who are epidemiologists, right? This is like an infectious disease specialist.
Yeah.
I am like the segmented expertise. I'm not going to talk to my dentist about COVID, but I am going to talk to an epidemiologist. I'm not interested in what Scott Atlas, who is a neuroradiologist, taking MRIs of brains, right? That's what he knows about. And he says, but I know about this. Why would I believe that? Peter Navarro, the economic advisor, said, I've got a PhD. I'm ready to give advice about this. That's nuts, right? I mean, I've got a PhD, but if you come to me with a pain in your elbow, I'm going to tell you, don't trust what I say about physical rehabilitation.
So on this point of like trusting, like say science or scientific institutions, like especially in with times with certain, I think, fields, or even in recommendations for coronavirus, like people say like, well, they're uncertain and they're not right all the time. Like how do you deal with that? A common thing is like nutrition science. People like, well, one week they tell me that I like eggs, and the next week, it's bad for me, right? I'm gonna die,
Yeah. Eat
So
only
like,
eggs. Eat no eggs.
yeah. So there's parallels in the coronavirus with like mask recommendations and such, that there's differing opinions and uncertain information. Like how do you deal even with somebody who's credible and knows their stuff as an epidemiologist, it like might not be right, and how do you like deal with people who point to that as evidence that they shouldn't be trusted?
Well, sometimes common sense kicks in for me, because back when people were saying, when whoever said we didn't need to wear masks, trust and believe I had a mask on, because if you tell me that something is respiratory airborne, duh, that means mask, barrier, right? And if you are talking, just as Dave said, about data, if you are really supporting the data, and yeah, the data initially wasn't right, but people kept trying to find information, and as new information came out, we get that information, and then we started to get a lot of the same information from different sources, like about the possible relationship between COVID and particulate matter, right? It was the same study in Japan, in Beijing, in Italy, in the US, right? So you start thinking, there might be a connection. So you have to be diligent too. We can't just accept things at face value. So that's sort of like what I'm about. I'm about your reputation, who knows you, what you've done, but also what people say about you and what I see. And all of those things together, for me, makes a person trustworthy or not. You do one thing bad, we have a problem.
Well, you got to own up when you screw up,
Right.
right? So it's like science promises a process that you welcome corrections. And so like for me, any magazine or newspaper that doesn't publish corrections, I don't trust,
Yeah.
because none of us gets everything right all the time. And when somebody is unwilling to, admit error, that's like a big red danger sign.
Yeah.
And so you say, well, how do we know that this is right? What would evidence say? How would you know it's wrong? And so when you're talking to people that you actually think you can educate, you say, well, how would you find out if your belief is right or not? Like, what would you look for if the stuff about climate change is true or not? The expertise thing, I want to rant for just a second.
Go. Do it.
Rand fucking Paul says that impeachment after the president's left office is unconstitutional. Okay, Rand Paul does not have a college degree. He does have a medical degree, and he's an ophthalmologist. So if I have cataract problems, I am willing to listen to what he might say. His constitutional authority is based on that's right. And I am angry about that. I'm angry about people opining about stuff that they don't know about as if they did, right? So, like, I'm going to protect all the articles of the Constitution, 4, 5, 7, 9, right? More Constitution than there was, right? That's a warning sign.
Yes.
So,
I had
sorry.
No, you're good. That's great. I had a question about so like I think when think we've addressed is the fact that like people who have PhDs and then speak on everything like an expert. They'll use it as a way to manipulate other things they want to communicate about. Is this something that, I mean, we've been doing the show for a few years, and I mean, obviously under Trump's presidency, there's like lots of crazy misinformation that has spread. But do you feel like, as like scientists, this is something that has happened more frequently, like people trying to flex like their PhD to be authorities on other subjects that they have no expertise in?
You mean in the administration?
Oh, not just in administration, just in your lives. You know,
Yeah.
like
Well, so that's to people in my world don't know.
you cut those out. I guess so.
Yeah.
Quick
made
to
that- you
say,
made that
oh,
clear.
I'm not an expert on that. I don't know anything about that. I'll say it in the heartbeat because you're not going to make me say something that I don't know about because then I'm going to be caught out in a lie. And I don't want that. I don't want that on my record. So, and I think people feel the same way. If I can't prove it, if I don't know it, then I'm not going to say it. And I think that the people that I work with and have always worked with feel the same way. I think there are people, and we have seen that, who have absolutely no freaking clue about anything and talking about demon sperm and
Woo!
supposed to be medical doctors, and that concerns me. That does. It concerns me a lot. So
Mhm.
I think that it exists. It just doesn't exist in the people I hang with.
Right.
Yeah.
I live in a different world. I teach at a university, and everybody's an expert on everything. And it's like, if you had to work really, really hard to find something novel to say about Keats's poetry, then you better believe that you're competent to speak on everything. Well, that's nuts, but that's like a psychological thing that the university might breed. I think we're doing a little bit better, but nah. I mean, I live with more pompous people than you do, Adrian, and I may be one of them, right?
Well, I don't know. When I was in academia, I there probably were some people who acted that way, but in our program, because it was new, people stayed in their lanes, and I've been very careful to do that. But I remember when I went to law school, people were like, there were people who were saying, "Oh, well, you have a PhD." It's not in law, so I'm struggling. Let me be clear. I know nothing about what this is about. So, but there are people who put you in that category, and you have to clarify. Let me assure you, I know nothing, and my grade in this on this exam just proven that.
To stay in the lane thing, that was a big thing about 2 years ago when emergency room doctors started posting pictures of like their bloody scrubs and talking about the people they had treated who'd suffered from gunshot wounds. Like and these doctors are saying like, I know the damage that guns do, and they were posting pics, not of their patients because that would be unethical. And Ann Coulter and the NRA said, stay in your lane. You know how to sew people up. You don't know anything about like guns and the Constitution. And the doctors said, fuck you. I'm stitching people up. I'm like dealing with the implications of this, right? I know my lane. Coulter said, you may know how to take things out of children's orifices. And one doctor said, yes, I do. And I, based on my expertise, I know that you are an asshole. Twitter is rich. Yes.
Speaking of Twitter being rich, we are getting towards the end of the hour. And so we're going to take some audience questions in a second. But before we get to audience questions, I think I wanted to hear from both of you. We've kind of touched on it, but have you seen things moving in a direction that you feel is positive? And what would your advice or pronouncements be to help get us further into that green?
Well, I'll go first. Yes, I have seen things are getting better, and that was your question, right?
That was my question.
That was
Yeah.
a long question, so I have a short-term memory. And I think to you asked what suggestions would I have?
Yes.
I think that bringing in more people with the knowledge. For example, if there's research around um, um, cumulative exposures, then in addition to bringing in scientists and gathering that data, I think you need to bring in the public who has experienced that, who has who have historical knowledge about exposures and cumulative exposures and what that looks like, and
Right.
how many people on their streets died and things like that. You know, so that's
Yeah.
important.
Someone in the chat actually just asked a really good question. This is from Joshua Lesendorf. I think I'm pronouncing that right. There's a lot of expertise outside of academia, and how can that be used and validated, which is the citizen science, the community science, and traditional native science that you're talking about.
Yes, exactly. And I think we, in this administration, I have the feeling that we're going to see more of that. And I am wholeheartedly, I'm for that, right? Because I believe that all of that together is valuable, invaluable, actually. So that's what we could be, what they could be doing more of, and hopefully we'll be doing more of, reaching out to non-traditional people to get information. So,
Well, I mean, I want to I want to come in on this too. And like the one thing is like, what do we do? Well, one thing we should do is try to tell the truth and try to show our work, like explain why we think what we do. I mean, that's a starting point. And then the reasons for optimism, the administration's been better than I expected so far in trying to get people who know their jobs to do their jobs. That's encouraging. But there's been a lot of encouraging stuff that happened over the last 4 years. I was crazy encouraged by those kids from Parkland, Florida, who talked about their experience and looked for experts to talk about policy. So they said the political process is corrupt. That's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the NRA. And they were self-correcting constantly to try and make a more diverse and inclusive movement. And somebody who was inspired by them is this kid in Sweden named Greta Thunberg, who said, I thought if those Parkland kids were doing stuff, I could say something too. And she is a relentlessly on message. And she says, trust the scientists. And there are lots of smart committee, like these kids are wonderful
mhm.
and they're not unique. There's lots of smart kids like that from all kinds of different backgrounds, all over the place, who are paying attention and are ready to be engaged and change the world. And as people who are older than that, I'm sure that's not grammatically correct. As one of the people who is older, I think one of the things we have to do is listen to their experience and listen to their concern and encourage them.
I love that.
I
That's
agree. And I think it
beautiful.
works both ways, though. I think that's the beauty of it because we can each learn from each other. We have the historical knowledge and experiences about here's some pitfalls and things you don't even need to waste your time doing. And they have here's some unique ways of doing things and some fresh ideas. And I think together, that's a powerful movement. And so that's what I'm excited about is seeing like when they did we did a march. We were getting out the vote. I forgot which one it was in DC, and they specifically asked for, I want to say adults, but people who are older than them to participate as they saw fit, but still to participate because they recognize that there's this knowledge that exists. But at the same time, the those of us who've been doing this work recognize that there's this fresh perspective and this energy and all of this that's coming from the younger people, and that's why I say it's such a perfect. It can be such a perfect relationship. It has been in a lot of cases. So.
Sometimes other people's kids listen to me about like the accumulated wisdom I have from my many experiences.
Like hitchhiking? Is that something? I hope you
My own
advise against
children, not so much.
it.
Okay, well let's throw to some questions from our audience. This is one that we actually got emailed to us earlier. So this is from Nancy Dolly. I don't know if Nancy's watching, but she says it appears to me that corporations frequently use their wealth to contradict scientific learnings in order to increase their profits. Somehow we need a better safeguard to keep money from overspeaking truth. And I hope that you can include this concept in some possible ways to begin holding corporations, communications media, and scientists accountable for lies. Is that something that we're able to do? Do we just have to speak louder than them, or is there some way to hold people accountable?
I think we're going about it. I think that the movement is going about it the right way. We're talking about divesting, right, from these entities, and also calling them out and suing them, taking them to court, litigation. That's the lawyer in me, but litigate, take their asses to court. At the same time, yeah, I do think we need to talk louder, and it's also about who, like, the vision. What is the focus? This last administration wasn't about people, it was about profit. So of course the corporations were talking louder, and now I think it appears to me to be about the people. And so for the corporations, I tell my students to look at a source. Like, they'll say, oh, this is saying, coal isn't that bad. Well, who wrote that? Oh, the American Petroleum is, whoever it is. So looking to see where your sources are, and then you can debunk something, or look for other sources to support it. We have to do
Yeah.
the work too. So
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta, like, if somebody's looking to prove something, right, and they're paying for it and it's in their interest, you always have to be suspicious.
right.
It's like you're looking for somebody who's looking for an answer to something, right? Like, so it's like you want people who are saying, I don't know where this is going to come out. I passionately want to know the right answer to this question.
Right.
And that's not the gig that you're getting from like the Heartland Institute or something.
Right.
So anyway, like Nancy made that question.
Yes, that was
Okay.
Nancy. Yeah.
Okay, I'd give her some points. I would like definitely give her some points. She's earned it. That's a good point.
You got points, Nancy. Dylan or Russ, did you guys see a question in the chat that you wanted to make sure we covered?
Nothing super recent, but I was also just making sure the stream didn't crash. So I so deeply apologize.
Happened. A lot of what we were talking about actually was taken care of in Nancy's question. A lot of it was about people using platforms to sow mistrust in science, and I think we've covered a lot of that. So I want to go around the horn right now and see if anyone has final comments they want to make sure that they get out, and then I want to hear plugs. Where can people find you? I've read both of your blogs today. You both have amazing blogs. Let us know where you can find them, or anything else you want to make sure our audience knows so they can find you.
I'll go second.
So do I?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Concluding thoughts: tell the truth, show your work, try to talk to other people, and try to get answers to people, and not to be invested in whatever you think was the right answer beforehand. And yeah, so that's like a starting point. I gotta tell you, I just so much enjoyed being with all of you. On Zoom, I feel like we've had a moment, and
Love it. Very public.
I'm on, yeah, and I hope I don't overinvest in this. I mean, it's just like, but so I have a blog at politicsoutdoors.com. I tweet periodically at David S. Meyer 1, and I have a book coming out in the spring that's called How Social Movements (parenthesis sometimes matter). And
like
it's got
that.
a cool cover with a match on it.
I like that apprehension in the title.
Yeah. So yeah, that's enough for me.
Okay, so I don't have a book. I have 3 books in my head. I don't have any coming out. I call it climate Twitter, because there's some fantastic people on there, and then my handle is EJ Toxic Doc. So EJTOXICDOC, and we cover a lot of information there, and comments and opinions, and sometimes it's funny a lot of times, but people share a lot of information, and I can ask a question and get get information on a lot of different sources of that I can turn to and do a little research on. For my blogs, it's at ucsusa.org, and when you go in there, just go into the blog section, and I do blog a lot. this summer we did a lot of blogging around COVID-19, of course, but we blog. We have a large number of great people who blog, and so we cover a lot of issues that thankfully are being addressed in this administration. And so my final thoughts would be that the key word for me that I want everybody to use is partnership, equal partnership, because that's the only way that we are going to make substantial changes, is that if we work together as equal partnerships, equal partners.
Thank you very much. Before we get to who we are, UCS did ask us to drop something in the chat. Dylan, will you drop that for me right now? Yeah. So they wanted me to give you guys all this. So check this out. They want us all to go and check out the For the People Act, which is something that Union of Concerned Scientists is trying to get more information on. If we want to help science have any prominence in this administration, what we first need to do is make sure that everyone has the ability to vote and vote safely and vote without discrimination. So this is something that we all need to be calling our representatives about as soon as possible. So Dylan's going to drop a link in the chat.
I did.
Check.
Do you want to give it a shot, Alex? Because you can't actually click the hyperlink, so it looks like I just sent this in the fucking 80s. Just type it in.
Drop the link in the chat in the second.
Okay.
Or in a second. Dylan, do you want to let everybody know who we are?
Yeah.
For the,
while you drop it in there. Cool. Yeah, we're Science the Show. We do this once a month. We like to try and make science. We're science communicators. We try to make scientists demystify science, as Alex likes to put it, and open up the communication between scientists and the people that are interested in it or not interested in it, and then we make them interested in it. That might have been me, but yeah. Otherwise, anything else you want to say, Russ?
No, I think that's
Cool.
good.
Yeah. I'll sign us out.
Oh, well, our handles are all on the bottom.
Right.
You can find us there, Science the Show, anywhere. So on Instagram, Facebook, although we don't really use that anymore because it's a cesspool. Twitter, we are on TikTok right now. I'm too old to really know how it works, but we're
hate
there.
it so much.
Yeah,
this is definitely the less important part of the stream.
Uh,
Talking about our
also-
TikTok. Smash that like button.
Find us on Venmo. We some of you did donate to us already, and that's wonderful. There are so many more important people to be donating to right now. So donate to them first. But if after you've donated to important causes, you still feel like giving us some money, you can find us on the bottom of our screen where our Venmo is. And that's it. You guys are wonderful. We're so glad all of you showed up, and we'll hopefully see you next time. Bye.
Awesome.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.